rebel religion in the news.
All right, a war on pornography. That's what's going on in the state of Texas, and we're going to talk about that right now. I'm Jerry O'Lennon with Rebel Religion in the News, co-host Alfredo Romero, Rock of Life Fellowship, based out of Chico, California, and Bishop Peter Hansen of St. Augustine Canterbury Anglican Church, also out of downtown Chico. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, here's the story. Here's the topic. The state of Texas enacted a law mandating that adult content websites verify the age of their users. Now, since its implementation, this happened a year ago, a dozen websites have blocked access. Critics argue that the law infringes on fundamental rights to freedom of expression and privacy. All right, this is a big can of worms we're going to open up. Let's talk about it. Bishop Hansen, I know that this is an area where you're an expert. You're not an expert in pornography, but you're an expert in trying to cure men, mostly men, women too, and many clergy who are addicted to pornography.
Sure.
This is a real battle inside the church, and one of the things that the church really doesn't feel comfortable talking about. Am I correct in saying that?
Oh, I'd say so, because the statistics show us that a great many men, more than a majority, are addicted to pornography right now. So how do you get them to vote or to favor something that's going to curtail it? Well, when we talk about keeping children away from it, that's what used to be true. I mean, you couldn't a 6-year-old couldn't go out and buy a Playboy magazine from a drugstore. They were adult only. It was understood. Pornography took a huge jump forward in terms of being part of the culture when the internet started to offer, free imagery anytime you want it, in the dark with your little TV glowing. And at this point in time, there's new porn sites being opened every day. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's got the hearts and minds of so many people tied up with it because it comes so innocent. It's just so simple, so easy to get to, and it comes in little stages, little bites, like these clickbait that you'll get on the side of reading your Gmail, and suddenly you're following something, and then it gets more and more disclosing until you're finally in somewhere where you don't know why you came here, but you're all lit up sexually, and you can't get yourself out of it, and then it calls to you. That's how addictions work.
Yeah, my men talk about this a lot. We can be looking at because the sites know where men go, and we talk about how the clickbait happens. So we just want to go to the sports page and look at a sports page, and every ad on the right is like for solar panels and a woman in a bikini standing next to it, or singles in your area, or and it's just you're bombarded even on what you would consider just non-sexual sites.
Yeah,
women from the Ukraine.
Yeah, I was on Amazon looking for some gifts for my wife for Christmas, and she likes some workout outfits, and some of these workout outfits are something that 30 years ago you would see a stripper wearing in a strip joint somewhere in Las Vegas. Not that I would know about that, but that's the kind of thing and I'm not even joking. They were very tight, very snugged around areas of the body, and you're like, whoa, I just want to buy some workout gear for my wife, and you're inundated with all of this stuff. It's impossible to get away from. But we're talking about real hardcore porn, where we're talking about the definition of pornography, and correct me if I'm wrong, is there has to be, gosh, I hate to say this on this show, it's a Christian show, but it has to be some sort of act of penetration. Is that correct?
No.
Not necessarily?
No, pornography is it can be imagery, it can be literature, it can be audio stuff, it can be any kinds of sensory input coming from something that enlists a sexual response. And so, there's a sliding scale there. There are lovely pictures of people who are falling in love and who caress each other, and you kind of respond to that. There's nothing wrong with that. But when they start taking off their clothes, and now we're being led into this, and you got an R-rated movie. A brief nudity is still considered an R-rated movie, but we're into we're leading into pornography. And I once saw no, I won't give that definition. But I think that if we limit pornography to only certain acts or certain clear things, we're kidding ourselves because this thing is so shaded. It comes in all kinds of colors and different little innuendos.
Should it be this law in Texas? It's called HB 1181. It mandates that entities distributing adult content verify the ages of their users. The law does not apply to all platforms. Some sites and social networks that allow explicit content, such as X and Reddit, are exempt. Digital platform is not considered pornographic if less than a third of its content is sexual. But it gets into such detail. But basically, it comes down to if you want to view this stuff, you must be a certain age. And I find that hard to believe why this would be a problem. The law says that only adults over 18 can access the content. It seems to me that that is a very reasonable law.
You're the
But-
movie guy, you know how the R rating and
Yeah.
G rating and all that kind of stuff is gone.
Well, this is X-rated. This is
this we're
this
talking,
is smut.
and they would not let the kid in the show,
Right.
in a theater,
Right.
but he can buy the DVD on Amazon and watch it anyway.
Right.
I never thought about that.
And it also brings up, and
horrible.
it's something we'll talk about maybe in the second segment, but I'll bring it up now, is the idea that maybe limiting what kids can have in terms of a phone. I mean,
Sure.
is that too constrictive? I mean, to say, okay, you have to be a certain age even to have a phone. Would that be wrong?
Well, there's options. I used to work for a cell phone company, and you can buy, even now, you can buy phones that just make a call, and you can text, but you can even set who they can call.
Right.
Without the data, which is actually getting quite popular now. But also, I know that I just read an article, and I don't have it in front of me, but about a week and a half ago, Australia just, I guess they created a law now that you have to be at least 16 to get onto social media.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how they would police it. I don't know the details on it, but there's definitely, thankfully, a movement to limit the access to certain websites and social media and the internet in our youth.
Do you think this has any chance of taking off?
Well, I think so, and it's a single step. It's one attempt. There are services such as Covenant Eyes, for instance, which is a service that doesn't necessarily filter the information coming into a phone, but it shares the stuff that's questionable with another person. So, like Pastor here is saying, you could have parents set up a phone and give it to their kid like this, and the minute he gets an image on that phone that looks like smut, it goes a report back to the parent, and then they can have a conversation and say, honey, you're going to this stuff and it's gonna hurt you. Well, I know that you don't understand it. Maybe your friends are all about this, but we know where this goes, and it gets in there. The brain is set up with the limbic center, which is at the center of our brains, which is a place where information is read. This is pleasurable. I like it. I want it again. And so anything that reminds me of this says yes. Similarly, this is terrible. It hurts. It's painful. I will remind myself every time I get close to anything like this, get away, back off. So it precedes logic. We don't have our frontal cortex activating it and saying, this is bad for me and I think I'll stop. No, this jumps the fence and says, I like this stuff, I'm going for it. And it takes a lot of work once you've given your brain permission to go these places.
Talk about the rationalizing that men do in accessing this and saying that it's somehow acceptable and God's not going to have a problem with it and he's going to forgive me and it's all going to be okay.
Well, there's a big percentage of Christians who say it's good.
Yeah. Women too, I guess. I hear
Yeah.
that. I don't know that.
It's a growing percentage. It's 30 or 40% of women.
Are addicted to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, our men's group, we talk pretty open about it. Every man at one point in life struggled with pornography, and it was just basically a point now where my men are pretty open about it, and thankfully, and we look at ways to honor God first of all, and try to remove things that are these gateways or these bridges to it, or staying away from things. And there are filters on internet that you can put on. On your, you can go through a certain, like a VPN, and it's a website that filters all in type of pornography content. But it's also we say something too in our men's group that time plus opportunity equals trouble. So if you've got the time and you're alone, you got the opportunity, more than likely you're going to get in trouble. So find ways to make sure you're not in an opportunity a moment with time and by yourself, because more than likely you'll get in trouble. That's just one of the ways that we're attacking it.
You know, one thing I've noticed in a good trend, if you go to a hotel nowadays, you go to a Hampton Inn or something like that, the TV set, the great big TV set there, which used to be a swamp. You know, it had little children's programs, you had regular programs, and they had porn, and you'd sell it right there, and you could go look at it.
Right.
It's not there anymore. You know, it's just TV. It's just cable TV stations. You might be able to tune in something on HBO late at night that you shouldn't be watching, but by and large, there's not that doesn't have that porn thing. It used to be, and I heard a hotel president from one of the hotel groups say, you know, we're selling beds. That's what we do. We sell a place to sleep. But these porn companies, the porn companies would come in and sell and give these huge TVs, console, electronic equipment, the sales mechanism. They'd give it to the hotel for free.
I never knew
It's
that.
hard
I
to
didn't
say
know that.
no.
Yeah.
And
But
that,
we'll give you all this great state-of-the-art equipment, but you have to put our product on the TV.
right.
Or the
Right.
availability.
The porn has to be an option.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
and they found that when Christian groups, Christian conferences would come into hotels, they were the number one for picking the porn stations
Yeah.
and renting that when they had time alone in the hotel room.
Yeah, time plus opportunity
Yeah,
equals trouble.
trouble.
Yeah.
I'm speechless. I
Me
had no
too.
idea.
I didn't know that. those sneaky guys.
Well, they're not there anymore. I mean, the option isn't there.
Right.
You know,
Good.
you get a little HBO, and which are generally horrible programs.
Right.
I don't watch the TV and.
Well,
and
but we're going to be
Netflix.
taking a break, and one of the things that I think we need to discuss is how somebody who is involved in it gets away from it and avoids it, and how difficult it is once you've been snared in that to get out of it. We'll continue our chat on pornography, the war on porn, when we come back.
Rebel religion in the news. Rebel religion in the news.
Hey, welcome back to Rebel Religion, the news. And the news right now is how can we fight off as men and women the temptation to get into pornography? That seems to be a huge problem, especially obviously even in the church. So what we were talking about now is what are the tools that we can use to avoid the temptation of pornography and getting into trouble and dishonoring God and ourselves and our family and our friends, etc.
There are many means by which joining a group is almost essential if you're feeling ashamed of yourself. Shame is really the enemy here. And there was once I saw a diagram, which if you look at a figure eight, two circles, one above the other, if you coming up the lower circle and you come to the nexus between the two, and you have an event, this trouble that you're talking about, you fall down and you say, "Oh, I feel so darn bad, about myself. I'm a bad guy." If you buy the "I'm a bad guy" message, you're gonna keep in the lower circle and circle around again. You're gonna hide. You're going to turn away. You're gonna seek solace in solitary behaviors. People are going to make you feel afraid to reveal yourself, and you stay in that circle, and then you end up doing it again, and it becomes a cyclical thing. If you can instead accept guilt, say, I did wrong, and that's a sin. I am not sin, but my behavior was definitely so, and you confess it outwardly, and you find somebody to tell it to, and this is where groups like your men's group are essential because we need to be able to disclose without shame, but with clarity, with conviction. I did this wrong, and be forgiven, and be prayed over, and then be accountable to others.
That's the word I was going to use, accountability partners.
And then walk alongside of others. It's the only way to get out of the trap.
I read where if you bring Jesus into your mind, into the equation, the devil always flees from Jesus. And there have been times when I've had those temptations, and the only time I've been able to be a victor of them is when I would think of Jesus and saying, Jesus, you need to attack this because I can't do it. Is that too simplistic, or does that kind of thing actually work?
What works, works. I mean, if it works for
Right.
you in that situation, it's great. But people will shrink from Jesus and run from him because they're feeling that power of that moment can be too strong for them. And then they'll hide out from him, and then they come back later and say, or they'll say, he's going to forgive me. So, I'll just turn off the
Right.
juice for a while and go to my happy place.
Right.
Yeah, the men that we have, we say the Bible is and many definitions. We call it a toolkit for men, and we have specific Bible verses that we'll focus on. Keeping things of evil out from our eyes and our ears, and we use Bible verses that pertain to overcoming temptation, and we use that as a toolkit. And we've got these little books that I've handed out that are geared towards men about, read a Bible verse every day, acknowledge that you don't, as soon as you get up in the morning, Lord, this is the day I'm not going to fall to temptation. I'm not going to keep myself in an opportunity moment, and I will honor you. And my goal is to please you every moment. I think you have to set your mindset, renew your mind every morning with the mind of Christ before you attack your day, because you're going to be attacked through the day with tons of temptations.
Was this a problem for men during biblical times? I mean, there was not pornography, but there were certainly beautiful women walking around, and we certainly knew of Bathsheba, and
Yep.
so there were certainly attractive women around, and who Samson and Delilah. I'm sure Delilah was a babe in her days, and I'm sure that there were a lot of babes in those days that people had fantasies about, that men or women had fantasies about. Is Ecclesiastes right that there's nothing new under the sun, that this has always been
Well,
here?
Solomon had how many wives and concubines?
1,000.
1,000. And I'm sure he didn't have the internet, but he had it right there.
So
With
Solomon was a sexual addict.
Oh, man.
Oh, God warned him. He warned him, but he did it anyway. And he was supposed to be the wisest man. So
But you said when people hear that, I could hear some men saying, "Well, okay, at least I'm not Solomon. Maybe I'm not so bad." And then they say, "Well, then I'm okay if I just go to this website, because compared to Solomon, who's a biblical hero, I guess I'm okay."
I'm not really committing adultery. Well,
I'm
what-
like, yeah, because if Solomon could do 1,000 and David is lusting after Bathsheba, I'm not so bad.
I'm just on my video screen. Well,
Yeah,
what Jesus said, I'm sorry,
right. I know.
he said to look upon a woman with lust in your heart, you've committed adultery with her in your heart.
yeah,
It's what you are. It's not just what you do.
yeah.
So back to the Texas War on Porn law.
Yeah.
16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, you must be 18 to access any of this. The question is, even if this law does pass, and this is why I brought up biblical times, is it really going to make a difference? Because the sin is embedded in all of us. The minute we come out of the womb, it's there. By preventing people from looking at this, is that really going to make a difference? I mean, this stuff didn't exist 2,000 years ago, and Solomon was hanging out with 1,000 different women. I mean, so I guess what I want to play the devil's advocate here.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, I
Why don't
get
you take the ball?
Well, I think this might be it's just, everything we battle is not the flesh and blood. It's a spiritual battle, and it's an attack from the enemy. It's us, yes, being sinners. We have to attack this, in my mind, spiritually. Things like this may be tools.
It's a Band-Aid.
It's somewhat of a Band-Aid. If it helps one or two people, okay. It's like the old starfish, or it made a difference to that one, throwing it back in the ocean. But this is a spiritual issue. It needs to be attacked spiritually. This is a spiritual attack, and we have to use the spiritual tools that the Bible gives us. Honoring God. The Bible tells us specifically men need to have accountability to each other. Yes, iron even sharpens iron, that we get together and we battle together, we fight these things together. I think the biggest thing that's happened in my men's group is accountability, being very open about it, because most guys are too ashamed to admit that they've either had a pornography problem or they do now. But it's a spiritual attack, and that's pretty much where I'm at.
Yeah, I mean, you got to do something. This is terrible to men. Men don't know how to be men anymore, and this is an area. This was one of the definitions we got from Hugh Hefner. Thank you very much. That you got to be a playboy, and guys with a little rabbit in the back of their Mustangs, showed us all what real men they were. I mean, we had a real false definition that was going out
It's true.
and was telling young people, young men, this is who you got to be. You got to be sexually active. You got to have a lot of conquests. You got to have babes all over you. And no, 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 absolutely not. You don't have to be a prude. Have a wonderful relationship with a young lady and be chaste. Hold your sexuality back, and honor her until marriage. Now that's a laughable standard to talk about nowadays.
It is.
You
That's the
can't make
problem.
it law.
Yeah.
We can't go back to prohibition. This is something that we're going to be able to. We should be able to address openly. I mean, I'm glad that Texas is doing it. It gets the conversation going
Yeah, it's true.
and shows what damage is being done, what harm is being done to young men and young women.
How many men have you helped through this during your lifetime?
Oh, not terribly large numbers, but a dozen or so. Yeah.
What percent of those dozen? How many of them do you feel have actually conquered this?
About half.
About half. Is that about what you would guess would be the percentages of people who are able to conquer it? And by conquering it, how do you define conquering an addiction to porn? How would you define that?
Well, you
Or sexual addiction, not necessarily porn. And you can still have a sexual addiction and not even look at porn.
That's right. Because you stay away from pornography, but you see a girl in those painted on stretch pants going down the street, and you got to decide, am I going to
Take a second look or just
look
keep
again
walking. Yeah.
or avert my eyes? There's a technique called bouncing your eyes. Your eyes see it, your eyes bounce off, and you got to stay away from it and quell your heart, because there's things in us that build a preference for that kind of thing, and or we can have an aversion to it and say it's not okay.
Yeah,
I'm too weak to do this.
That's a technique our men use to bounce your eyes and immediately just pray, and that's it. Does help. It does help. There are many tools. I don't know if there's like one solution to this. I have a feeling there's just it's a combination of things that men have to do to avoid the temptation. I don't know if there's just one solution. It's a combination of things.
Yeah, I was thinking about the TV show Cheers and how Ted Danson was always the Ted Danson character.
Right.
Sam Malone was
Right.
was like, what a hero! Wow, look at and Cliff and Norm were like, oh, there goes Sam again. He's gonna, and we would laugh at that, and we would think it was funny, and it still is, I suppose. But it doesn't seem as funny now as I've gotten older. I look
Yeah.
at that now, and it doesn't strike me as funny. It strikes me as sort of pathetic.
And
Yeah.
it's a weird thing that we've built, society's built, and what a real man is. For example, even when you hear true stories about teachers, like example, if there was a man teacher that had some type of a sexual encounter with a student, a female, it's like, oh, horrible, and which it is. But if a young man had a sexual encounter with a female teacher, the guys are high-fiving, and it's a man fantasy. It's like there's this horrible lie that the enemy has fed us on men being sexual conquestors,
Right.
So anyway, yeah,
Yeah.
Hopefully that'll change.
I hope
Hopefully
so.
that'll change.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, we need a new positive, heroic image of men who are holding their goodness and rightness with it. And I hope we're heading into an era where that can be talked about. We need to talk about it more.
We talked about that earlier this week as well, where particularly since the election, we've noticed more men going to church, and that's something we'll maybe talk about next time, about how maybe masculinity has come back over the last month since November 5th in the election.
Yeah. Jesus is always the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes.
Well, yeah. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you.
God bless you all. Have a great day.
Thanks so much. We'll talk to you next time here on Rebel Religion in the News. Thanks for joining us. Take good care. Talk to you next time. Bye.